This is the Infinite Energy Show, where together we explore the infinite dimensions of energy. We're sisters Kay and Shi, seasoned restaurateurs, university educators, and the visionary co-founders of the Neuroencoding Institute. We're not just sisters by blood, but your allies in personal growth and transformation. Here's what we know about you. You want more energy. How do we know? Because everybody does, including the most successful people in the world. So let's get to it, because in the world of infinite energy, anything is possible.
Friends and family, we are back from, I bet you just can't even guess where from.
Italy.
No.
Africa.
No.
South America.
No.
Obviously, we just came back from Scotland.
Yes, we did. We had a sister trip. 1 week. We packed in so much to see while we had 7 days in the beautiful country of Scotland.
So today, we hope you are excited because we're doing a little spin on the classic move of, why don't you all come sit on the couch and look at our vacation photos? Okay, we're going to do that, but it's going to be way more fun.
Get ready for the Aunt and Uncle PowerPoint, where we take you through everything that just happened to us while we were on our journey through Edinburgh, through the Isle of Skye, through the national parks, through Glasgow, through the beautiful, beautiful land of Scotland.
And did you know they drive on the left side of the road?
What? No, well, that is just an interesting and difficult thing to get used to.
It is, and we're going to share a little bit more about that and everything else that we learned, we saw, and experienced in Scotland on today's episode.
Stay tuned.
So here on the Infinite Energy Show today, we are taking Scotland, or more specifically, Kay and Shi's recent experience of Scotland, and we are walking all around it. We're sharing things, we're talking about it, we're looking at it, and we're assessing all of the lessons so that we can bring you along over this episode into our fantastic journey into Scotland. Now, Kay, why did we even go to Scotland in the first place?
Well, we like to challenge ourselves with runs, with timed runs, things like 10Ks and half marathons. Now, Shyla has been running a half marathon every year, and together in 2020, her and I ran a half marathon together. Well, in between that time, y'all know how hard COVID was. I had a baby, and so now that we are postpartum, back and ready, we said, you know what? We need a sister trip to run a half marathon, but to celebrate, to take it to another level, let's take it to another country.
Yeah, a place that we've been wanting to go to forever. And here we are last year in 2023, Kay's come through a divorce. We're in this place where the things are new and different, and we're both focusing on fitness. And we said, what if we went to Scotland? What if we went to the place we've always wanted to? Let's just see. Let's just see if there's like a half marathon and we could run that together and go to Scotland. And lo and behold, the Edinburgh half marathon scheduled for May 2024 was there. And so we booked the trip 13 months ago.
So 13 months ago, we booked a trip to Scotland and we just got home. So we've been waiting for this. We've anticipated it. We've been so excited. And we got to do it in a very small time frame. So we were there for 1 week's time. So we're going to take you in today's episode on a little bit of a day by day. We're going to bring you in with some pictures, with some exciting surprises, and bring you alongside us into our journey because we learned so many lessons. We created so many memories, and we're really excited to share them with you.
Right. If we like to talk about infinite energy on this show, there was definitely infinite energy abound in Scotland and in Edinburgh and in the race. And so we're going to take you through that. Now, the travel to get there, we left on Thursday morning. We traveled all through Thursday night, staying mostly awake, and we arrived there on Friday morning. And we took the advice that almost every international traveler tells you, which is keep yourself awake that whole first day so you can get yourself on the timing track. And you know what? It worked.
We did it. We stayed awake all day long on our first Friday, but it wasn't too difficult because it was our very first day in Edinburgh, which, fun fact, now for those of you fellow Americans who are like us, you may be tempted to read this word here on the sweatshirt and say Edinburgh. Edinburgh, but we don't say it like that. Nope. Now you know the official way to say it, and if you're confused, it is Edinburgh. It's a little bit soft on the end, but if it feels funny to you, you can reliably say Edinburgh. So if you need to be like an American about it, that's how you say the word.
Edinburgh. Edinburgh, way better than Edinburgh or Edinburgh. So whatever you do, don't say either of those. Edinburgh, or once you get there, you get comfortable and you hear the Scottish people saying it. There really is a half syllable at the end.
Edinburgh.
It's sort of like the G is a vowel. Edinburgh. Right? So you say it like that. So now you're in the capital of Scotland. Now you know Edinburgh. So we spend our first day in Edinburgh, and we are absolutely classic American tourists. We're like, oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, take the picture. Excuse me. How long has that building been there? 1,000 years.
Everything's so old.
It was a lot there. Everything is so old. Everything was beautiful. And we did the museum. We walked Victorian Street, which is the inspiration for Diagon Alley. We got to see all of the old buildings and, of course, the beautiful castle.
It was such a beautiful experience. We had this very first day. We ate food, and thank goodness we took the advice of someone online and made reservations for our dining experiences ahead of time because we really needed that. And so this is just maybe a little international travel trip for you if you get out there. But we had wonderful meals. We saw incredible sights. And on that first day, we have this level of anticipation, this level of excitement, this level of what are we about to do? What are we about to embark on? And I feel like those lasses were just a couple of wee bairns.
They were.
They didn't know anything about what was to come. They were gallivanting around a museum like they only had a day there.
Oh, those wee barons, as they say in Scotland. And we loved hearing the accent. And yes, we did a fair amount of imitating it ourselves. You might even hear it a little bit here today. But we laughed as the trip unfolded. We're like, wait, that was only yesterday?
Whoa.
So we definitely feel like multiple lives were lived. Like if you've traveled, raise your hand if that's happened to you. We know it has, especially if you take a big trip to a new place. So that was fun for us. All kinds of new synapses firing, new experiences to be had. And we ended our Friday nice and early, but late enough so that we could get up early on Saturday and do a really fun special thing.
And we didn't end out our Friday without a delicious lesson. And that was where Shyla and I, we were out and about, we're exploring the city streets, and we said, man, we really want some coffee. And we decided, well, we'll find a Starbucks, right? Because that's safe. We're Americans. We know Starbucks. We can go to a Starbucks. We're like, okay, we'll find a Starbucks. So we're on our route to a Starbucks. And all of a sudden, we're like, well, there are these really cool things here. They're like these long alleyways with stairs. And they call them closes. And we're like, well, let's just go down a close and let's just see. It's not really on the way to the Starbucks, but it is on our way back to the hotel. It's in our general trajectory. We know we need coffee to stay awake. So let's just see what happens. We're going to go down this close. And so we're walking down these old steps and we come across an enchanting little door covered in flowers, and we say, let's go inside that door. And lo and behold, we found ourselves a perfect little cafe.
It was so adorable. It was a local place and they had coffee, which, fun fact, coffee is actually the name of every drink that comes from the bean. So if you want to drink coffee like how we say coffee in America, like a black coffee, they call that Americana. So we went in to have our Americanas at the little local place out of the close, and it was so cute. It was called
Brewhemia.
Brewhemia, yes, I love that. And turns out, even though we felt like we came into this little tiny door off to the side, it was actually this 3-level situation with a stage and like a place where bands could perform and people could come. So it was really fun to discover a local favorite, have some flair, and step outside of our Starbucks comfort zone.
That wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had a moment of questioning, maybe doing something different, of following intuition when we are sparked for an idea. So this is your signal, your encouragement to maybe allow yourself a little bit of wonder, allow yourself a little bit of whimsy. Maybe there's a time where you're headed toward your same routine, but if you change things up just a little bit, magic might happen. So that's just day 1 here on the Kay and Shi Scotland tour. We'll be up next at you for day 2. Hello and welcome to your next segment of the Kay and Shi Show.
Now, we apologize for being so casual. We hope you don't mind that we just showed up in our regular day outfits here.
You wouldn't even want to see the night outfits.
So fun. Okay, so obviously we're wearing the dresses for a reason. These dresses actually came with us to Scotland.
We flew them all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to Scotland because how often do you get to have a photo shoot with your sister in a country full of castles? So I booked this photo shoot on a recommendation from my best friend who also had a photo shoot with this particular photographer when she visited Edinburgh a few years ago. And so I booked the photo shoot and I call Shyla and I tell her, now, do you want to be normal people or pass? Total pass. I totally said pass. I didn't even know what was coming next, but I knew that we do not want to be normal people. And so Kay proceeded to say, okay, so if we're passing on normal people, this photographer does do some of those photos, offers photos in women in gowns, and let's just look at some of those pictures. And we looked at them and we're like, we obviously have to do that. Come on, who doesn't want to be in a beautiful gown in an old city with a castle? And while we got a little historical tour at the same time, like it was peak experience. It was so fun. And yes, we loved wearing the dresses. Well, that morning we got dressed in regular outfits and we packed these magnificent silk gowns that we have used at galas in the past for our MC duties that we do when we go to speak and represent charity organizations. So we had the dresses already ready to go. We packed them in our backpacks and we get to the church where we're about to start in on our first round of photos. And we're looking around and the church is just beautiful. And we thought to ourselves, is this really the time? I mean, we're out in public and there's all these people around. We would have to change on the side of this church into these dresses. Are we going to be okay? And ultimately, we came back to what Shyla said in that very first conversation where I called her. And I said, Shyla, do you want to be normal? And she said, pass. Pass on that. Come on, to change behind the church, live your life, do the dream, wear the dress, which we did, and it was so much fun. It took 2 seconds to change. We each covered each other. It was not a big deal. And out we emerge in our dresses. Now, of course, that started turning heads. Everyone's like, what is happening with those women over there? What is going on with those dresses? So I think everyone thinks we were like for some fancy commercial photo shoot. We're like, no, they're just for personal use and social media use. And it was so fun. And now we got the photos back and they are so amazing. The photos are stunning. We're so grateful to have these memories encapsulated. Later on that day, we got to go to Edinburgh Castle and do a tour around the castle. Yes, we had to put on our gowns for the castle. And it was a beautiful afternoon. We then went to the National Portrait Gallery and we had so much fun. But ultimately, we kept coming back over and over again to this lesson, to this idea that oftentimes we hold ourselves back when we're trying to be normal or to fit in, when maybe what's inside of you, that spark of creativity says, why don't you put on a fantastic, fabulous green silk dress and go take pictures with your sister? But there's a pull inside. There's a voice that can come forward and say, are you really confident enough to do that? Is that really something that you feel like you can do or should be doing? Is that reasonable? But sometimes we have to allow that voice of creativity, the voice of fun, the voice of whimsy to come forward and to overrule that, which we actually ended up finding this balance while we were in Scotland between reason and whimsy, or as the great Scot said, in the crest of the unicorn at the castle itself, that the unicorn is a symbol for both manliness and whimsy. Yes, innocence and aggression. They can live together. And it ended up being a theme throughout the Scottish trip. And so we felt so proud that we had made the decision to bring the dresses, live the life, do the thing, look silly and ridiculous, but enjoy it and have fun, which we did. And now we get to treasure those photos forever. And then the lesson got reaffirmed in Scotland over and over and over again. The Scottish people both are able to harness and hold the idea of fanciful fun, of whimsy and magic, of lighthearted beauty and frivolity. Frivolity, indeed. But they're also brutal, right? Like their weather is brutal, their history is brutal, their clans go to war like crazy. You know how here in America we see signs for sex trafficking, kind of those are the signs that you see in the airports and things. We saw there domestic abuse signs. So even noticing some of those cultural differences between this idea of we're going to embrace the whimsy and the fun, but we also have this violence and this brutal and this darkness, allowed us to feel better about embracing the dichotomies in our life, be it between silly and serious or between having fun and still taking things in a way that allows us to be professional. So here you are. We hope that you join us in saying pass to being a normal person and from living life in your most creative, fun, fabulous, fantastical, whimsical, successful, ambitious, and strengthening type way. Yes, exactly as the Scots would intended. So we bid adieu today too. And next up, meet us at the Edinburgh Half Marathon.
See you at the start line. Race day, baby! Too bad it's raining outside.
Oh, raining heavily, raining with almost, I think they hadn't had this much rain in a 1 month stint, they were saying, in like 5 years.
It was a literally legendary downpour, and everyone told us that was exactly what we should expect from Scotland. So much so that the night before we were out and about and somebody said, oh, you're running tomorrow. Are you going to get a poncho? They let us know where to get a disposable poncho. They even told us it'll probably say Scotland on it. It absolutely said Scotland on it. So there we were in our giant disposable trash bag ponchos that said Scotland on the race line, pelting with rain and wind, ready to go.
Well, here is the thing about the Scottish people, though. They are a people of spirit. They are a people of strength. And so we may have been poncho clad, but there were so many folks out there in shorts, in their little bralettes, in no shirts at all. And we were like, man, the Scots, they are so tough cookies, because we were darn cold. Now, if you know anything about a half marathon or a marathon is a 26.2 mile race. A half marathon is a 13.1 mile race. The track of the Edinburgh Half Marathon went from the top near the castle all the way through by the Holyrood Place Castle, by King Arthur's Seat, down to the coast, and then into a little bit of the suburban areas of Edinburgh. So it was a beautiful track, but 13.1 miles is no joke.
Yeah, and in the pelting rain and the wind, it was a proper Scottish hello for us. Well, what made it even harder was about 48 hours before the trip, my daughter came home from her choir trip to Six Flags with a little tickle in her throat. A little tickle that turned into a cough that she kept coughing repeatedly on me, which I then felt the tickle on the plane to Edinburgh. Now, what do? You live the life. You keep going, right? You do what you do. So there we are. I'm on the start line, but my lungs are also so congested. And so, honestly, I super struggled through the race. I struggled really bad.
Which is surprising because, as many of you know, Shyla and I, we both love to run, but Shyla's the runner girl. I love to get out there. I'll lift weights. I'll go rock climbing. I'll do all kinds of different stuff. But Shy is pretty consistently on that treadmill every day, 6 miles every morning. And so this is her jam, right? When we do a half marathon together, honestly, normally it's about me trying to freaking keep up with her.
Oh, the whole time we've been training up to it. You've been saying, I just got to keep up with you.
Just got to keep up.
You can go. And I'm like, no, we're running this together. I want to run this together. And Kay sets the goal for 2 hours and 30 minutes. Like, that's my goal. And I'm like, we can do that. I know we can.
Yeah, well, the last half marathon we ran together, we took some bathroom stops. We took a character stop. It was Disney, but we ran it in 2 hours and 47 minutes.
So we knew we could do it, and we felt good about it. But there we are, start line, pelting rain, pelting wind. My lungs are not able to get a full breath, and we start. So we're going. It's beautiful, but I realized within mile one that this is not the normal mile one is a liar. This is oh my gosh, my heart rate is skyrocketing. I'm struggling to breathe, and this is going to be a chore for the whole 2.5 hours. Which it was.
Now, Shyla was able to push through, but while we were in the middle of the race, something kind of interesting happened. We were running along, and normally it's me trying to keep up with Shy, and I'm just doing my absolute best. And she looked at me just like I had looked at her several times before, saying, look, this is your half marathon too. If you want to run as fast as you can, you go for it. Now, she looked at me in the middle of the run, and she said, I don't know if we're going to make our goal by 2:30. If you want to go, you can go for it. And I said, no way. We run together. We are a sister running team. So though she died, though she had to walk every once in a while, we made it to the finish line in 2 hours, 29 minutes, and 29 seconds. Woo!
31 seconds to spare on the goal. We made it through. Kay is doing me a favor by saying that I spoke words to her because speaking words was very difficult. So really what it looked like was me going like this. And I go, baby, I gotta walk. You go. And she's like, I'm not going. And I'm like, my heart rate's 180. And she's like, I'm 120. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dying.
Like we're sea level. It's a downhill run. I was having the run of my life. Like it was amazing. I look over and poor Shyla is dying.
Ooh, I was struggling, but I really wanted to make the time. I didn't want to hold her back from the time. And so there she was pushing me. I'm dragging her down / pushing her. But together we made it through. We wore the trash bags. We come around the sea bend there to the ocean and we're like, wow, look at how beautiful. Couldn't even finish any kind of comment.
Trash bags are flying in the wind.
Ponchos are flying.
We're being pelted with, you can't even tell if the salt you're tasting on your face is your own sweat or the seawater. It was wild out there.
It doesn't matter. You're just going, you're there. Everything is soaking wet. And there we are with 12,000 people. But we crossed the line with 31 seconds to spare. We are finishers.
Hey,
and we got our medals. Now we get to put them on.
Yep. So you get to come along with us on this journey. We finished the Edinburgh Half Marathon. We had an amazing run and race, even though there were some difficulties along the way. We did it in 2 hours, 29 minutes and 29 seconds, 31 seconds shy of our 2 hours and 30-minute goal. You bet your buttons the next half marathon we run together will be an even better goal than that. But it was a challenge. It was difficult. And then here is something that kept coming forward time and time again. Now, this was a challenge that we didn't anticipate, right? We weren't anticipating there to be quite so much rain. We weren't anticipating to be soaked through to our socks. We weren't anticipating for Shyla to be incredibly sick. We didn't have these anticipations at play, but we had the end goal, not just in our mind as an idea, but as a reality that we knew we were going to make manifest. You couldn't hold us back from that 2 hours and 30 minutes, so much so that Shy would push through her sickness to make it happen. And so sometimes you might feel like you're at your limit, like the circumstances are starting to mount and maybe you should back out. But oftentimes the answer isn't to take 2 steps back. It's to lean in and go even further, to do your best to fulfill on the promises that you make to yourself.
Oh, I love that. And I love that we were able to carry that, to champion it, and to get over that finish line with the goal in place, which also helps underscore, I know Kay and I reflected on it quite a bit on the trip, setting a goal in the first place, right? Like not just to run the half marathon, but to run it in 2 hours and 30 minutes. And so we worked towards that and we had to push towards that. Had there not been that piece or component to it, maybe we would have taken it easier, or maybe there would have been this option for us at some point to say, oh, tap out. No one's to say that's right or wrong. But what we know for sure is that we wanted to get over in 2 hours and 30 minutes. We put the target on the board. It motivated us. It drove us. We talked about it. We planned about it. We calculated around it. And we achieved it. And it felt so good to do it. And it made us hungry to do even more of that.
Well, it certainly made us hungry because that afternoon we went and had a delicious proper Scottish tea at the wonderful Waldorf Astoria Caledonian Resort there inside Edinburgh. And we had a proper afternoon tea with small pastries and scones, a harp player in the background.
There was a harp player, y'all, like a real harp player. She was playing Disney music. I'm pretty sure she knew we were coming.
It was legit. It was really cool. They had tons of gluten-free options. We had the most delicious cakes and pastries, so got to treat ourselves after our big run with a relaxing afternoon tea that we got to have that afternoon. And we got into bed early that night so that we could wake up the next morning and begin what I think was probably the most growth-filled portion of our journey.
Indeed. Stay tuned for the second half of the Scottish trip that takes us out of the city and into the country. Come see the Highlands with us next.
Or dare we say, takes us out of the city and into the sky. We have done the race. We have worn the dresses. And now it is time to don us a rental car.
Which it turns out, as you know, in Scotland and in the rest of the UK, they drive on the left side of the road. So in the US, we drive on the right as well as about 75% of other countries, but there's about 30% of countries that drive on the left. So we knew this was going to be a big part of the adventure. And we get into the rental car and Kay gets behind the driver's seat, which is on the right-hand side of the car. And we're both like, this feels very unfamiliar, very weird. The passenger seat feels so strange because you're just exposed in this chair that normally has the steering wheel in front of it, no longer does. So here you are just exposed as a passenger. And in front of you in the passenger seat in the bottom corner is a little sticker that says, stay on the left.
Oh, the sweet stay on the left sticker. Now we get into the car and we look at the stay on the left sticker and we're like, oh, that's so funny. They have to remind people to consistently stay on the left. That is hilarious. So we get in the car, we get on our way and we start driving, and holy cannoli, is it difficult to remember to stay on the left of the road. Every bit of my neural programming since I was 14 years old learning to drive a car tells me that I am to do it on the right in a driver's seat that is on the left. Now, you might not think that this tiny switch could have such a big difference, but it made this action that is basically second nature for both of us feel brand spanking new and gave us an appreciation for what it truly takes to build a long-term habit.
Now, we'll talk a little bit more about driving in a minute, but we got in that car and we weren't just tootling around going to Glasgow, going to Edinburgh. We did a small circle inside of the entire country of Scotland, including going to the Isle of Skye. And that was our goal. That's where we spent 2 nights, and we went up to the Highlands, but we didn't drive the direct route. We went a longer route through the national park. We saw Balmoral Castle. We went through some truly local small towns. We
drove on Old Military Road
for a long time.
A long time.
We saw tons of sheep, like sheep everywhere. Sheep in the road, sheep on the hill, sheep by the house, sheep at the shop, sheep. Turns out there's more sheep in Scotland than people, so I'm not surprised that we saw that many sheep. But there's also in the Highlands a very special animal that you might see depicted right here on Kay's sweater.
We like to call them the Highland coos. We love us a cow. They are the classic Scottish furry cows with these beautiful horns. But in Scotland, we don't say cow like an American. We say coo. Anything that would be an ow sound is an oo sound. So they call them Highland coos. And we got to see them all over. But here's what's special about the cows in the Highlands, the coos in the Highlands. They are huge, freaking mungus, like the size of absolute cars. And so we see a cow and we're like, wow, that is a huge cow. And we keep driving and we're going, we're like, oh my gosh, more cows. OMG, they are like the size of cars. What is happening here? And so we Google, why are the cows so big in the Highlands of Scotland?
It's not just the Highland coos. Like the regular coos were also super coos.
The coos were hooch.
Yeah, hooch coos in Scotland. So please continue.
Oh, we Google it. And we're like, why are the coos so big in Scotland? And Shi, why are they so big?
Turns out that generation after generation of facing adverse circumstances and experiences and environment has made them bigger. Evolutionarily, they have been bred now. The ones that were strongest survived. Those stronger ones they brought forward stronger ones. And the genes that were bigger, that were sturdier, that were hardier, that were stronger are the ones that succeeded. And so we started to really think about this idea. And then once we saw it, we couldn't unsee it.
Turns out everything in this environment has to be extra strong and extra sturdy because they're facing adverse winds, difficult rains, cold winters. And in order to survive in the Highlands of Scotland, you have to have some strength to you. And if you aren't a hardy, strengthened human or a hardy, strengthened coo, you may not be able to survive in these conditions. So we started to think about this as it parallels our own lives. What happens when we come across these adverse conditions? Now, oftentimes, adverse conditions are a result of us walking down a particular path as we do our best to move toward our dreams. But these conditions can be difficult, and only the strong survive, which means that when the world feels relentless, we have to be relentless in return.
That was the major lesson, and not just from the coos, but from the people and from the country as well. In fact, because the Scottish people have faced so much conquest and so much adversity and so much pressure, especially from England, their neighbor, to take over and of conquest, that they actually rooted more in their identity, that we see more pride, that we see more traditions, that we see more of this anchoring into what it means to be a Scot. In fact, you hear it said, the Mary Queen of Scots, or you hear of the King of Scots. They don't talk about their royalty as kings and queens of Scotland because you don't rule a land, you rule a people. And so they're the king and queen of Scots. And so you can see this deep identity emerging from adversity over the hundreds of years. It started to become kind of a joke because everywhere you go, you read the history and we're like, what brutal uprising is this one going to be about? And we're laughing, but there's the brutal uprising right there. Like it was there before so human history, it's been brutal, it's been metal, and it's made for some humans that can handle a lot more than I think we give ourselves credit for these days.
Most especially in Scotland. So So we get through the Highlands, we see these giant coups, we're driving all over, we go through the beautiful national park, and we get into the Isle of Skye, our first night in there. And the first night we get there, we come across an interesting thing. The local bridge is closed. Every hour they open for only about 15 minutes because of construction that's happening. So it was just a funny thing. It was called amnesties. We had never really heard of that, like this amnesty idea. Either road is closed or it's open and you get detoured. But it was fun to see construction play out in a different country. We come into Portree, which is in this beautiful northern village on the Isle of Skye, and it was absolutely scenic and so picturesque. And then the very next day, we got the opportunity to tour around the Isle, to take the northern loop, as they call it, and we went to the Fairy Glens, where sheep have been grazing for thousands of years.
The Fairy Glen was a highlight for us. It's hard to even describe and put into words the feeling, the gravity, the energy, the texture of the environment. It was truly something special, unforgettable. I ran with sheep. Like first,
no, not ran away from sheep, not ran towards sheep. Ran
with. I ran with.
It was
sheep.
Amazing.
I started it running towards them because I sometimes like to do that kind of thing. If there's animals, just for fun, I'm running towards them, and then instead of running away from me, like all of a sudden I was just part of the sheep pack.
Yeah, there were a few sheep there.
Part of the herd. And there I was running with the sheep. So count that as a core memory for Shyla, running with the sheep, and being there with Kay and with my sister and together was so special for us. So we got to see the Fairy Glen, which was so amazing. We got to see the Quarang. We got to see Kilt Rock. We got to see a real Scottish gas station, where petrol station.
Like a local petrol station.
Yeah, but not where tourists go.
Nope.
And so, we get in there and we select all of our Scottish snacks because you got to do that. And it's hard to do the money translation thing. So we get to the front with all of our snacks and I pull out 20 pounds and I'm like, it might be a little over 20. So I'm just going to have 2 20s in my hand. I pull out my 40 pounds and I'm waiting and she rings it all up and she goes, 7 pounds and 16 pence.
It was so much stuff.
It was so much stuff. And it was so cost effective over there. So that was really a fun benefit to get to enjoy.
But as we kept going through the Isle of Skye, as we kept going around and getting to see all these beautiful nature places, we found ourselves going, oh my gosh, this cliff, it looks just like Oregon. And oh my goodness, look at those mountains over there, look just like Washington. And wow, look at this greenery, kind of looks like Florida. Why would we find this here? And on we went. We would find a place that looks like Reno, or a place that looks like this desert place we know, or this is Oregon, or that's Southern California. And it turns out Earth is Earth, man.
Which became our cry on the road trip. Earth is Earth. It made us laugh. And because every time, it's just human nature, you want to put together what you've seen and this looks like. Exactly, comparing where I've seen this and what does it look like and what have I experienced before that's similar to this. And so we were noticing the human nature to do that. And so we would come back to Earth is Earth. And that was fun.
Well, Earth was Earth, even as the very next day we left the Isle of Skye, left Portree, or Portree as they say it in Gaelic, and we went down south toward Glasgow through the Cairngorms National Park, where we got to see the Three Sisters Mountains. We drove by Loch Ness, by Loch Lomond, and got to see some of those iconic Scottish sites. We went to Eilean Donan Castle and just got to once again witness so much of this rich history. And as we were going by the Loch Ness, we realized that the Loch Ness and the story of the Loch Ness Monster has been something that, at least in American culture, has been present our whole lives. And here we were, finally at a place that had been influencing our vernacular forever.
Right? This mythical creature that probably is only rivaled by Bigfoot. Some might say aliens, but then are they mythical, are they not? But here on Earth, right, the most famous mythical creatures are the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. Now, Bigfoot might live anywhere, but Loch Ness Monster definitely lives in Loch Ness. Now, Loch in Scottish means lake. So at the Lake Ness, and they call it Nessie. And there's all kinds of stories and history and souvenirs and tourist things. And we did a driving tour around it. We did not see Nessie, but we felt the energy of the entire area. And it was fun to visit a place that literally we can't remember a time of not being able to refer to that mythical creature.
You're right. That's almost as unbelievable as Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, right? We've been hearing that our whole lives. So once we passed Loch Ness, we came into Glasgow for a quick stop at the university that basically looks like Hogwarts. It was
amazing.
Very wonderful.
Gorgeous.
And then we got back into Edinburgh for our very final sleep before we headed out the next day. We had the best time getting to come alongside the country of Scotland, to enjoy it in the way that we did, to steep into both the people, the flora, the fauna, and to understand more about the rich culture and history of those who have walked those lands before.
Now that was amazing, and we waved goodbye to Scotland. And we were still wee lasses because we had no idea that we were about to enter the travel situation in Dallas.
Yes.
So the situation that us and hundreds of thousands of other passengers over the weekend experienced, the storms around the tornadoes and the hurricane. And so we were coming through, and there were people literally there who said they'd been there 2 days and 3 days waiting on canceled flights. We got wrapped up in the mess of things. Our flight gets delayed, it gets canceled, we get rebooked, it gets delayed, it gets canceled at 2 a.m. in the morning. The next Reno flight isn't for 48 hours that they can get us on. We're going to try to get to Fresno. The line for customer service, gang, I've never seen anything like it. We asked the people at the front, how long have you been waiting? And they said 6+ hours, after a guy said a day and a half. And I think he was saying he'd been in the airport for a day and a half, but it was insane. But don't worry. We did make it home, and it's part of our final lesson here for you today.
Yes, that evening, all throughout the night, that we were so exhausted. The next day was my daughter's kindergarten graduation and musical performance. And so we had a really important reason to be home, to be there for our girl, to make sure we could see her through an important transition for her little life. Now, that night, kept refreshing the flights on American Airlines, kept to see, just to see, right? You know, the booking agent at the customer service line couldn't see anything, but maybe the internet will see something that she doesn't see. And so we kept refreshing and kept trying. And there we were at about 5:30 in the morning when we refreshed the American Airlines site, and 2 tickets on a plane to Reno have become available for an 8:13 a.m. departure to get us home that very day, when our next best option was going to be to go to a town 5 hours away and drive back and still miss the musical performance. And so we were able to find it. Now, this here was a result of not giving up, even though those circumstances seemed pretty dang hopeless.
Right? They got relentless, and we got relentless back. We stood in a bunch of different lines. We talked to a bunch of different agents. We had literally been booked on, by the time everything was said and done, 4 different flights trying to get us out of that original Reno flight. Fresno, we booked out of a different airport. We at least reserved Southwest tickets to get us home. Like, we were going to be relentless back. And through that relentlessness, through that endless refreshing, up popped 2 tickets. We got the tickets. We got home, and there we both got to be at Violet's sweet little kindergarten graduation. So don't give up, and especially don't rely on those travel folks. They're overwhelmed in those situations, and usually we've found you can work it out for yourself if you keep on trying.
So be relentless, be resilient. Find yourself moving forward in difficult situations. Take the spirit of the Scots and you're back, and don't give up. Even if you feel conquered, even if you feel like your voice is being squashed, you speak louder, you be more. If you have an option to be normal, pass on that option. Have the whimsy. Find flavor in your life. We both feel so energized and re-energized for entering our lives, feeling as though the spirit of Scotland is at our back as we move forward into our next chapter.
Well, the spirit of Scotland is at our back, and we have always got yours. Remember that this comes at you with so much love from your sisters,
Kay and Shi.